Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Okay. Hope you are fine at your home and Eid is coming and hope you will observe all the precautions for prevention of our pandemic, which is almost settling down now. I don't know your cities, how is the condition there, but in Lahore, it is almost settling down. And in major cities, there are no more hospitals, no more patients in hospitals. Especially, we had a lot of patients in Arizona and other hospitals, but almost they have been discharged last week. And the environment is good. And today, hope you are fine at your home and enjoying your holidays, the other holidays with the teaching schedule. So today we are going to discuss very important communicable diseases like children who are exposed to viral infections like measles, mumps, and rubella. You all must be vaccinated for these viral infections because these are highly infectious diseases, can lead to morbidity and mortality, and we'll discuss detail regarding these viral infection, which can be prevented by having the good vaccination schedule. And first, we'll see how what are these agents which are responsible for these diseases, and what is the host defense mechanism, what are the factors which can lead to predisposition of these infections, and what are the complications, and what are the environmental factors like socio-economic conditions and the host defense system, which may be impaired, leading to high prevalence of high uh, incidence of infections like measles, mumps, and rubella. And we'll also discuss the preventive measures and what are the measures which can be done to control these highly infectious viral infections by our good vaccination schedule. So vaccination is very important in this part of the world, especially when they are socio-economic conditions are not good and there is a high risk of getting these infections. So vaccination schedule should be tightly observed in our children to prevent them having these infections. So first we'll discuss the measles. This is a highly infectious disease of the childhood. It's not only the childhood, but it can be in adults and having worse complications like pneumonia. We'll discuss in detail. So it is a basically disease of the childhood, children who are not being vaccinated and are in a bad social conditions. So it is a highly infectious caused by specific virus, which is the RNA paramyxovirus. So these are the RNA viruses which are transmitted from person to person through droplet infections, and they cause bad disease, which is called measles. So it is characterized by high-grade fever, respiratory symptoms, followed by typical rash. We'll discuss the rash, which is a typical rash of measles, and especially children who are immune compromised and they have socioeconomic conditions are not good. They have poor socioeconomic conditions. They can have high morbidity and mortality, especially in the developing countries. And 2% of under 5 mortality in India. So in India and Pakistan, there is a high rate of mortality in Pakistan and India. If we look at the history, measles was there was a pandemic in 2014 where 114,900 measles deaths globally. So this was another pandemic of measles in 2014. And if we look the mortality rate, about 340 deaths per day and even 13 deaths per hour. That was the bad pandemic in 2014. Just we see nowadays coronavirus COVID can lead to high mortality rate, but that was the time when measles had a pandemic, and it has led to very high mortality, especially in children. So measles vaccination resulted in a 79% drop in measles. This is how you look at what is the importance of this vaccination, which can prevent our children from having these infections. And that's between 2000 and 2014 worldwide had reduced to 79% drop in mortality rate. So you can see the very clear advantage, evidence-based uh, advantage of vaccination, how we can protect our children from having these lethal infections. So measles is still common in many developing countries, especially Africa, Asia, and our subcontinent. So, what our duty is to have vaccination schedule tightly observed in our children to prevent them having these infections. If we look at the measles virus, which is a RNA virus, which is a paramyxovirus family genus morbillivirus. So it can't survive, or this is a very, very important point, it can't survive outside the body. So there is no reservoir. It is the source of infection is case to case. Measles, there is no carrier and no animal reservoir. So it is not through some mosquito or other, it is from human to human infection, which is a highly infectious disease. One children is affected, and if anybody is exposed which is not vaccinated can have this sort of infection. So there is no reservoir, no chronic carrier. It is just social infection from case to case. If we look at what are the source of infection, infective material is the secretions of the nose, throat, and respiratory tract. So it is a droplet infection like COVID virus. And the virus remains active and contagious in the air on infected surfaces for up to 2 hours. So it has a short life, but it can be highly infectious. Once the patient coughs out or has contaminated hands and they put on their face, eyes, and they can be infectious to the other children and other people. So period of communicability is 4 days. This is very important. 4 days before and 4 days after the appearance of the rash. So this is the period of infectious communicability when you have some children has infection. So it is communicable before the appearance of the rash, 4 days before and after 4 days appearance. So there is an infective phase which is very important, and then you can have a highly infectious during prodromal period at the time of eruption. So when there is a rash appears, almost the infective period has gone. So it is a prodromal phase, which is 4 days before and 4 days after the appearance of the rash. Then there is a children is highly infectious, febrile, and very irritable. And the secondary attacks are more than 80%. So if you look at the host factors, what are the factors which can lead to infection in children, especially if we look at the age 6 months to 3 years in the developing and underdeveloped countries, more than 5 years in developed countries, and almost all the sexes and age can have the infection. Immunity. This is very important. No age is immune if there is no previous immunity. So if people who are not vaccinated before, they have a high risk of getting this infection, whatever the age is. Depends on the viral load they are exposed, and high viremia can lead to infection even in adults. And children, yes, they have high risk of getting these sort of infections if they are not vaccinated before. So one attack can lead to lifelong injury. Yes, if you have a nasal infection or you are being vaccinated by your proper vaccination schedule, you can be lifelong, can have a lifelong immunity. Nutrition factor, yes, it is very important to have a good nutrition to the children. Children who are malnourished, they are highly susceptible and they have a high mortality and morbidity once they have this infection. Environmental factors, if you look at what are the seasonal and weather conditions, environmental factors in tropical climate, dry season, which is a highly vulnerable, and temperate climate, especially winter season, overcrowding. So people who are in low socio-economic conditions and they have a overcrowding, and even outbreaks can happen in areas where they have a low socio-economic condition, poor dietary conditions, and they have a overcrowding. Especially in India and Pakistan, it is the January to April is the maximum peak time for infection. Transmission, as we discussed earlier, it is through the body secretions, especially droplet infection, droplet nuclei, portal-factory is almost respiratory tract, and sometimes there is a conjunctival entry, which can be through conjunctiva. Incubation period is 10 to 14 days, but the infectivity period is, I told you, is 4 days before the appearance of the rash and 4 days after the appearance of the rash. This is the time for rash, the communicable period, that is 4 days before and 4 days after the appearance of the rash. So if we discuss the clinical features of the measles, it has a three basically stages, which is the prodromal phase, then is a eruptive phase, and then is a post-measles stage, which is a even when you have a complications and other manifestations. If we look at the prodromal phase of measles, it is from 10th day of infection to the 14th day. So it is the prodromal phase, which is after getting infection. You have febrile illness, and patient have cough, coryza with sneezing, nasal discharge, and conjunctivitis. So this is the almost upper respiratory tract infection leading to cough, nasal discharge, nasal congestion, sneezing, horizon, and even conjunctivitis. Lacrimation and photophobia can be another symptom. And fever lasts for almost 4 days, and then they will be GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, or even diarrhea. Complete spots are very important pathognomic and significant spots which appear in the mouth, mucosal membrane, and if we look at the conjunctivitis and rhinorrhea, and this is a child who is having measles infection, and look at the lacrimation, conjunctivitis with a discharge, and the nasal congestion and discharge. And Coptic spots, they are the very important clinical sign of measles. They are pathognomic sign, and 1 to 2 before appearance. If we look at the appearance, generalized rash appears later the Coptic spots. The Coptic spots appear first, and they are small, bluish white spots over the red base, usually seen on mucosal, the buccal mucosa, with the first and second row roller team. This is the picture of the Coptic spot. If we look at this is the Coptic spot, which is has a reddish base with blue spot. They are in the buccal mucosa. And another view of the Coptic spot, which can be seen here and here. So these are the Coptic spots. Eruptive phase, second is the eruptive phase, which is a dusky red generalized nephropecular erythematous rash appears on the face, neck, your chest, and other parts of the body. So behind ear, first they appear behind the ear, they spread to the face, neck, and extend from the body within 3 to 4 days. So first phase is the prodromal phase, when you have a conjunctivitis, you have a cough with nasal congestion, even you have a lacrimation, and then is the phase of before the appearance of the rash, you will have a Coptic spots, and then you have a appearance of the rash, which is a generalized macropecular erythematous rash, taken usually behind the ear, spreads to the face, neck, and the whole body in 2 to 3 days. In the absence of complication like rash and fever disappear, if you don't get any child don't get any complication like pneumonitis, pneumonia, any other complication, this rash disappears in 3 to 4 days, and rash fades in order of appearance. They are crops of rash. They appear and then they have a dark pigmentation and disappears. This is a picture of a erythematous necropecular rash on the chest, and this is the basically just a picture to show you the how this infection takes place and what is viral infection which lead to high viremia leading to clinical manifestation. This is the if someone has an infection here, it has a viral infection. It goes to a person who has been infected and leads to entry of this infection through the oral respiratory tract, leading to high viral count, and then this is the incubation period. If you look at the incubation period, almost 2 weeks, and then you have a period of disease, which is appearance of the public rash. You have a fever, coryza, respiratory symptoms, public spots appear, then you have a generalized rash, and then disease disappears. And you have a second, you look at the viral infection, and the virus goes into the lymph nodes, and lymph nodes go to the body surface, and they grow on the body surface, and you have a respiratory manifestation and inflammatory period. This is the shedding of the virus after it dies out, and then you have a antibody response, just like COVID virus. After infection, you get high viremia, you have complications, and then you get the shedding of the virus. The virus dies out after about 2 weeks, and you have a high antibody response. So this is the whole aspect of immunization. When any child who has been properly vaccinated, they are given vaccine here, and they have some febrile illness, mild infection, and then grow their antibody, and they are protected for life. So this is the whole picture showing the viremia. Then you have a clinical manifestation, rash, and this is the viral load and leading to infection. And this is the same if you vaccinate a child here, and you will have a 2 to 3 days, maybe a few hours of mild illness because of the virus itself, which has been introduced to the body, and then you have a antibody response, and the child is protected for life. So third phase is the post-nasal phase, which is the growth can lead to in children, can lead to growth retardation, susceptibility to other infections like pneumonia, especially 50 to 80% children in developing countries, they develop pneumonias, and they have a high risk of morbidity and mortality. But in developed countries, only 10% develop these pneumonias. GI symptoms we discussed earlier can have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and respiratory infection, especially upper and lower respiratory tract infection related to pneumonitis and pneumonias. Sometimes ear infection leading to chronic otitis media, and leading to in 5 to 10%, 5 to 15% of children. Rarely, febrile conversion leading to encephalitis can be a feature of disease infection. So it can be just effective phase leading to recovery phase without any complication, especially in developed countries. Children who are nutrition-wise good, they have a good environmental conditions, and they can recover very easily. But children who are malnourished, who have high risk of infection, high risk of complications like pneumonia, diarrhea, and even otitis media, and they can even have a high viremia leading to encephalitis, and can have a fits, and patient can have a lot of complications. So, what is the measles in basically in absence of more likely diagnosis? What are the other differential diagnoses of measles? Children with generalized rash lasting more than 3 days and temperature 103, and patients who have cough, coryza, or conjunctivitis. So these are the more likely cause the case of measles in child who has an illness characterized by generalized rash lasting 3 days. He has a fever and upper respiratory tract symptoms like cough, coryza, and conjunctivitis, and no link to the epidemics of measles, and no contributory or testing. Confirmed cases, if we look at the what are the investigation, or how can you confirm this is a case of measles. So laboratory confirmation by any pathology, you can go for positive serological test for measles, that is IgM antibody, that is a acute phase antibody which positive. And isolation of the virus from the clinical perspective, you can isolate the virus from complex spot, from the rash, or from the measles virus can be detected by specific polymerase chain by PCR. So lab confirmation doesn't have to have generalized rash but lasting 3 to 4 days of fever, especially if patient is having cough, coryza, or conjunctivitis. Any illness which is characterized by generalized rash lasting more than 3 days, temperature up to 101, cough, coryza, conjunctivitis, epidemic in confirmed cases of measles. So this is the spectrum of the disease which can be highly significant of having measles infection. If we look at the what is the treatment, once a child is having infection who has been exposed to the virus and developed the clinical illness, most important is the isolation of the child and days after the onset of the rash. This is a very protocol phase. 4 days before and 4 days after appearance of the rash is a very effective phase. The child is having or is rhinorrhea, sinusitis, even having high fever, and this is a highly effective phase. We need to isolate the child, do good nutrition and antibiotics, and if they get some complication like pneumonia, rhinitis, and other complications they have, they should be treated. But supportive care, good nutrition, adequate fluid intake, and treatment of dehydration. So if they have a diarrhea, they can be given oral ORS liquids, or if they have nausea vomiting, they can be given IV fluids. And adequate hydration is very, very important, and with good nutrition. Antibiotics, especially if you have a ear infection, if you have eye infection and pneumonia, they are given broad spectrum antibiotics, especially ceftriaxone and macrolides. All general diagnostic users should receive 2 doses of vitamin A supplement given 24 hours apart. This is another supportive care to prevent them having other eye complications, especially to prevent the eye damage and blindness. So vitamin A should be given in children who have been exposed to measles infection and developed a clinical illness. They should be given vitamin A within 24 hours. 2 doses of vitamin A, 24 hours apart. One dose one day and second dose the other day, second day. So this is to how we can prevent our children from having eye damage and blindness. Vitamin A supplement reduces the death from the measles by 50%. So this is the important supportive treatment of children who have measles. Number one, their isolation. Number two, they have a good nutrition and adequate hydration. And number three, if they get any complication like conjunctivitis or hyperthermia or pneumonia, they can be given broad spectrum antibiotics. And supportive care is vitamin A, which should be given 2 doses in children to prevent them having eye complications, especially blindness. And vitamin A also reduces the death from this by 15%. So this is a very important supportive vitamin, especially just like we have a forward injection, we give zinc and vitamin C that enhance your immunity, and it is just like in measles you give vitamin A. Preventive measures of measles, number one is immunization. So eradication can be achieved by immunization rate of at least 96% under 1 year of age. So every child should be vaccinated with MMR. We'll discuss the measles, mumps, and rubella. So this is a vaccine which is given in children under 1 year of age, MMR, and the ongoing immunization against measles. Measles vaccination, live attenuated vaccination is zero point 0.5 ml given subcutaneously at 9 to 12 months. Lifelong immunity 90 to 95% of children will have low grade fever and they are just paracetamol and they recover day after immunization they have a lifelong immunity. The MMR vaccine is a combination of measles, mumps, and rubella, which is available, and children are given or passive immunity. Immunoglobulins are given within 3 to 4 days of exposure. This is the active immunization for your activation of immune system to produce your own antibody by giving vaccination. And this is a passive immunization if a child is exposed and having high body complications, he can be given a human immunoglobulin within 3 to 4 days of exposure and then can prevent measles complication. So it is a highly infectious disease in children, especially the RNA virus, and can lead to conjunctivitis, coryza, sinusitis, and for respiratory symptoms leading to complications like pneumonia, enteritis media, and even blindness. So rule of thumb is you immunize your children by giving MMR vaccination. The measles outbreaks we discussed earlier, isolation from for 7 days after onset of the infection. This is a very important. How you can prevent your other children and other community members from having spread of infection by isolation for 7 days after the onset of the rash. Prodromal phase we already discussed is the 4 days before and 4 days after periods of the rash. So this is if you isolate the child or infected person for 7 days after the onset of the rash. This is almost a preventive time, and it can be prevented or isolated from having spread of infection. Active immunization of contact within 2 days of exposure, or passive immunization within 3 to 4 days. The active immunization can be done within 2 days because already person is exposed if you do active, and passive immunization by human immunoglobulin if the patient is sick and having complications. So prompt immunization at the beginning of the outbreak can be a very important in the community to prevent the spread of the disease. So enhanced measles eradication strategy by WHO. This is a catch-up. First, one-time only catch-up measles vaccination campaign is conducted among children aged 9 months to 14 years. Then keep up efforts are made to vaccinate through routine health survivors at the least 95% of each newborn cohort at the 12 months of age. This is how you can eradicate the measles by enhanced measles eradication strategy by WHO. And finally, to ensure the high population immunity among preschool age children, and indiscriminate follow-up measles vaccination campaigns are conducted approximately every 4 years. So this is in countries like Africa and other countries which are not being supported by the local governments and other agencies. So they are giving like NGOs and WHO help to eradicate their measles infection from the community. What are the challenges of measles elimination? So it is a weak immunization system. If you have a immunization is not good in our social system and in our health system, that can be a disaster for the children. So a weak immunization system is number one. Highly infection of the measles virus itself, inaccessible population in certain areas. Some areas are remote areas where vaccination schedules are not possible, even difficult, but it is important to, just like the polio virus, it is still in Pakistan, and we see a lot of cases every year, and polio vaccine is still a problem in remote areas. Refusal to immunization by the some people. This is another area which is very important. Some people think it is just an injection, not a prophylactic treatment. Rather, they can have some complications. So some people they have a personal issues for the refusal. changing epidemiological evidence and adults and catch-up immunization more than 130 billion children in India. So this is how you can protect your community from handling infection. Lack of human financial resources. This is some NGOs are there to help the poor children, and the WHO is also working, especially in underdeveloped countries, to protect their children from having measles infection. So this is a community-based service, which is uh, policy of the government to provide vaccination to all children, and it is also the social responsibility of parents to get their child for all these vaccination schedules. So after measles, if you look at the mumps, which is another virus, which is mump means British word time-based brain as a result of parotid gland swelling. So it is acute infectious disease caused by myxovirus parotiditis. It is another RNA paramyxovirus affecting mainly the glands and the nervous system. Mortality is very low in mumps infections. It only affects the parotid gland. If we look at the child having acute parotitis with swelling of the parotid gland, and it is a RNA paramyxovirus parotiditis, and social infection again it is a clinical subclinic case mainly by saliva and other body secretion like urine, human milk, CSF, and even blood. So these are the sources of infection of lungs, mainly the saliva, but blood, urine, and milk, breastfeeding, and CSF. The period of probability is 4 to 6 days of the onset of the symptom to 7 days after. So it is a communicable infection, which is 4 days onset of symptom and almost 7 days after the appearance of the clinical manifestation. So maximum onset of the swelling and secondary attacks are 86%. What are the host factors? So ages which are almost 5 to 9 years, but can be seen in any age. Females are more likely to be affected, and immunity less than 6 months of age infants are immune and lifelong immunity after the if you have a mumps infection, you can have lifelong immunity. Environment factors any time, but breaks in winter and spring season, especially people who are overcrowding and low socioeconomic condition, they have a high risk of getting these viral infections. Motor transmission by droplet infection, direct contact, and with infection from person to person. So there is no animal or other reservoir. It is just person to person contact and by droplet infection. Infective period is 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, what are the clinical manifestations? So, one-third cases usually are asymptomatic. They have a acute viral illness and they have a fever, aches and pains, and they usually recover from one-third of cases. And initial symptoms are usually earache. There is a pain in the ear on the affected side, and there is a stiffness on the finger mouth because of the parotid enlargement. And the pain and swelling due to involvement of the parotid, sublingual, and submandibular glands. There is acute viral parotitis and sublingual and submandibular glands, and this swelling usually subsides in 1 to 2 weeks. The patient becomes febrile with heavy aches and pains and upper respiratory symptoms, and then there is a enlargement of the parotid, sublingual, and submandibular gland, which lasts for 1 complication. It can affect the testes leading to we'll discuss later on. It can have a acute pancreatitis, can have ovarian infection, prostate, and even encephalitis with fits and other neurological manifestation. Severe cases almost fever 3 to 5 days, and you have a other complication. If you look at the complication, virus enters through the respiratory tract, and the virus grows in the salivary glands. This is the salivary glands and local lymphoid tissue, and then the virus approaches the spread to the spleen and the testicles and other lymph glands, and viremia takes place. This is the initial 7 to 10 days, and then you have a phase of almost 15 days, and virus spreads throughout the body to testes, ovaries, pancreas, thyroid, salivary glands, and you have a clinical manifestation of the disease of itself. And this lasts for almost 2 weeks, and then you have a 80 days after recovery phase. So this is acute infective phase, this is the clinical phase, and this is the recovery phase. Then you have a clinical manifestation, and after that patient recovers. So this is the core viremia. Then you have acute infective phase, which is a spread of virus to the spleen and distal lymph nodes, and then you have a viremia which lasts for 2 weeks, and you have a clinical manifestation. Complications, as we discussed, it can lead to orchitis. 25 to 40% of cases, they can have enlargement of the testicles and orchitis, and they last for 7 to 10 days after pericarditis with a high grade fever. A unilateral in 75% of cases, prostate with extra severe glands and adults. Hepatitis and pancreatitis is seen in 4% of patients, and sometimes it can lead to meningoencephalitis and thyroiditis, neuritis, hepatitis, ovaritis, the ovaries, nephritis in 5% adult women, and spontaneous abortion in pregnancy. This is one of the serious manifestation of mumps infection in pregnancy, can lead to spontaneous abortion. So rarely there can be hearing loss, there can be polyarthritis, encephalitis, and cerebellar ataxia. So this is the whole spectrum of the disease which then takes place in virus infection, leading to orchitis, epididymitis, pancreatitis, meningitis, thyroiditis, neuritis, hepatitis, ophoritis, and you can have hearing loss, polyarthritis, encephalitis, and so this is when you have a high viremia leading to clinical and systemic manifestations, leading to complications of mumps. Management, sportive care, again you need to have a sportive care, and case should be isolated because there is a first few days of highly infectious, and patient cases should be isolated, and contact should be kept under surveillance. Prevention, again by immunization by MMR vaccine, which is available, and it is a mumps is a live attenuated vaccine which is given intramuscular and in the form of MMR. Lastly, we discussed rubella infection, which is a Japanese measles. Rubella also is a sort of highly infectious disease, which is also called Latin term means little red. So it is a generalized disease caused by rubella virus, and rubella is also known as German measles or 3 days measles attacks. So typical course for rubella eczema starts initially on the face, neck, and spreads centrifugally. So this is very important. It spreads to the central part of the body, and then to the trunk and extremities. While measles, it spreads other way. So it is the general measles which spreads to the central neck, certificate to trunk and extremities. So within 24 hours, it begins to fade on the face, and second day they disappear throughout the body at the end of the third day. So it is a very temporary rash which appears and really disappears in 3 to 4 days. So, but this is again an RNA virus, which is a protovirus family, and the source of infection majority subclinical cases, minor clinical cases which are infected and having high viremia can be a source of infection to the other the infected material usually respiratory secretion, blood, CSF, and the urine. The period of incubation is 1 week, almost before the symptoms, and 1 week after the appearance of the rash. So this is a highly communicable infection. If you isolate your child or person who is infected and don't let it go to the other community members, then you can protect them and spread of the disease. So host factor again, it is common in developing countries, 3 to 4 years, 3 to 10 years the peak age, but 15 years development in adult developed countries it is 15 years and above. So lifelong immunity after first attack and material usually maternal immunity up to 6 months of age. So this is again the role of vaccination is very important. If you vaccine a child, he can have a lifelong immunity. Environmental factors, again, we discussed all-borne infection. They are usually more common in winter and spring season, and there were epidemics every 4 to 9 years. Epidemics takes place, and because it is the vaccination schedule and the isolation of the infected person is very, very important. The transmission is again through droplet infection, droplet nuclei, vertical transmission is another portal of entry, and especially the delivery is a vertical transmission and respiratory secretions. Incubation period 2 to 3 weeks and average almost 18 days. Clinical features in 50 to 60% they are usually asymptomatic. They have some febrile illness and they usually resolve spontaneously. But few symptoms like throat trouble phase, mild coryza, sore throat, and low respiratory, low grade fever takes place. Then one can have lymphadenopathy, especially post-auricular and autophagus, cervical lymph node enlargement. So cervical chain is with the both auricular and posterior cervical chain is involved, and patient can have fever, coryza, sore throat, and you can have a rash, which is usually a very discreet pinkish macular rash. Starts on the face within 24 hours of the onset of the protocol symptoms and spreads to the trunk. So it is a central part of the body is affected. If you look at the rash here, it is involving the whole of the chest and the abdomen. And you can have rash which is absent in 5%, which are subclinical cases. And they have only febrile illness and sore throat, and they don't develop the rash. But if you develop the rash, it is spreads to the trunk and extremities and clearly clears out in almost 3 to 4 days. And conjunctivitis may occur. So this is the appearance of the rash with the low grade fever and upper respiratory infection, and you can have the rash over the body. Complication of rubella usually very rare. It is usually some clinical infection that usually resolves spontaneously with some febrile illness, and other cases develop a rash which usually disappears in 3 to 4 days, but sometimes they can lead to arthralgia, thrombocytopenic purpura, and very rarely CNS condition and encephalitis. And how can you make a diagnosis? Virus isolation by throat swab culture and by PCR and by ELISA for IgM antibody. If you can isolate the virus from throat swab by PCR technique or by antibody IgM levels. Okay, one important point is congenital rubella syndrome. So this is very, very important rubella infection in pregnancy. So it is a chronic infection of the fetus and first trimester infection severe. If a pregnant mother gets rubella infection in the first trimester, it can be very, very serious. And fetal death and spontaneous abortion can take place. So, congenital rubella syndrome is a rubella infection in pregnancy. It is chronic infection of the fetus. First trimester is a very crucial phase when if child getting infected, and it can lead to fetal death and spontaneous abortion. If we look at the congenital rubella syndrome, that is congenital malformation can take place that is trade of deafness, cardiac malformation, and cataract. So deafness, cardiac malformation like ASD, BSD, and other defects can take place, cushion defects, and cataract. Other defects like glaucoma, retinopathy, microencephaly and microcephaly, cerebral palsy. Then you can have low birth weight, hepatitis, mental, and motor retardation. So these are all the neurological and eye complications which takes place at genital rubella syndrome. So this is a very, very serious disease. Once it happens in first trimester, especially when child can have chronic rubella infection or can lead to fetal death and abortion miscarriage. So, if you have a chronic congenital malformation, they can have a deafness, cardiac, and manifestation and cataract. If you look at the microcephaly, the infected child can have a microcephaly, and the rubella syndrome, they can have a PDA and other vision defects, they can have cataract. So this is a CNS, heart, and eye complications. This is a child who had congenital rubella and infection leading to eye complication and other complication. So this is another complication they can have. This is the cataract. You can see the very dense, cataract, and they can have other retinopathies and other complications. Prevention of rubella by immunization. That's the very, very important part of our vaccination schedule. And rubella vaccine usually is given almost lifelong immunity for 95% of cases. If immunization, especially in pregnancy, it is contraindicated. So during pregnancy, immunization is contraindicated because even small viremia can lead to congenital rubella syndrome. So the recipients of vaccine should be advised not to become pregnant 3 months after getting it. So this is another critical point. If someone who is highly vulnerable or can have exposure to a virus and can have a disease is protected, especially the pregnant women, they should be advised not to get vaccine 3 days before they become pregnant, 3 months before they become pregnant. So it's very, very important. Even pregnancy is contraindicated, but even 3 months before the plan for pregnancy, they should not get any vaccine, especially rubella vaccine, because high risk is a congenital rubella syndrome. MMR vaccine is available, again, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines are available. The two important critical points. One is the rubella infectancy congenital rubella syndrome, and immunization very helpful in 95% immunity. But important point is protect your child, especially the pregnant woman. It is contraindicated to pregnancy, and even 3 months before the conception, it should not be given vaccine to the ladies. And MMR is the vaccine which is available, and rubella vaccine will be given first protect women in 15 to 39 years. So this is the first protect women in 13 to 15, 39 years, and second interrupt transmission by vaccination children up to 1 to 14 years. Third, all children at the age of 1. So this is the next study for rubella. And MMR vaccination, which is a measles mumps rubella vaccine, which is a live attenuated vaccine, and it is given reconstructive vaccine, and this is the measles mumps and rubella reconstituted vaccine contains single dose of 0.1 ml, not less than. These are the three combination of vaccine MMR. MMR vaccine, it is dilute sterile water for injection. MMR vaccine will be given after 12 months of age, and after reconstruction it should be used immediately. Dose is 0.5 ml given subcutaneously per arm, and if the vaccine is not used immediately, then it should be stored in dark at 8 degrees centigrade for no longer than 8 hours. So better to treat the vaccine your children by the vaccination, which is MMR, up to 12 months of age. It is a single, it is a subcutaneous injection around, and it's better to be used in 8 hours. This is the basically the national immunization schedule for infant children and pregnant women. If we look at the BCG, hepatitis B, oral polio vaccine, polio 1, 2, 3, and DPT, and hepatitis and measles, and vitamin A with and you have a MMR. This is the DPD booster measles. Second, you have a booster dosage with the vitamin A and okay. So global measles and rubella strategy plan 2012 to 2020 is MMR initiative launched in global measles rubella strategy plan, and that is the between 12 to 20 this year, the end of this year. By the end of 15 plans, it will reduce the global measles deaths by at least 95%, and especially congenital rubella syndrome should be eliminated because this is a very lethal complication of infection during pregnancy. And by the end of 20, aims are to achieve measles and rubella elimination at least 5 WHO genes. And strategy focuses to be implemented on 5 core components is achieve and maintain high vaccination coverage with 2 doses of MMR and monitor the disease using effective surveillance and evaluate the program efforts to ensure progress in the positive impact of vaccination activities, develop and maintain outbreak parameter repentance and rapid response to outbreaks and effective cases treatment of the cases. Communicate, engage, build public confidence and demand for immunization and perform research and development needed to support cost-effective action and improve vaccination and diagnosis. So thank you very much. Basically, this is the MMR, which is very, very important for vaccination schedule, which should be given to each child to prevent the measles, mumps, and rubella because these are the highly infectious viruses which can lead to complications and especially congenital rubella syndrome and measles infection if it affects the pulmonary manifestation or you can have the CNS manifestation. So prevention is better than cure. So it is important point to take home messages. Every child should be given a vaccination schedule, and they should be it should be the responsibility of the state and the health department, and at the same time the parents and the society and the other helping NGOs and other. So it is a parent. I would say it is a parent responsibility to get your child vaccinated and to prevent them having these viral infections. So thank you very much. I hope you understand the objective and the disease process itself. Only prevention is better to get every child being vaccinated. Okay, thank you very much.